Yeah. Let's get started with this calendar seminar. So I'm just going to show very quick, that's the front of this year's calendar. And that's the pages all come together with pictures that I'm taking and other people are taking from the Black Hills. And then it's listed day 1 through day 30 or 31st. And then if I have space at the bottom, then I'll add some smart stuff about the calendar dates, about certain holidays, about significance of certain things that we are used to know and not applying anymore. The calendar contains not just, of course, the days and the traditional holidays here in the United States, but also the ancient quarter days, the ancient holidays that were according to the rhythms of nature. The Celtic calendar used to be 13 months because we have 13 full moons throughout the year, again, too. And the significance of those changes in nature determined the holidays. So and the Celts were the ones that took all the wisdom through Europe. And so that's why it is more adjacent to the northern hemisphere, and according to that, than to the southern hemisphere. You can apply it, you just have to reverse it all. It also lists the solstices and the equinoxes, which are important dates, and we'll talk about what that is. It talks about what is it here?
Solstice?
No, here.
Equinox?
Eclipses.
Eclipses.
Me and words. Eclipses have a significance on our internal and external application system. You have to look at our body as kind of like a natural computer. Okay, it gets stuffed with information, and every so often it needs rebooting. And the rebooting, just like an old computer, every so often they crash because they just need to kind of take a breath and get all the stuff in there. That's what we do during eclipses. That's in the ancient times, the people were sitting in their house and not doing anything during the eclipse, and it had its reason. It wasn't some superstitious thing. It was because we are actually rebooting all the non-physical energy that comes from the universe in us so that we can accumulate that and then move forward. And it really has a significance in the evolutionary process on our planet, even though it can be very subtle, if you ignore it. You don't have to take it into consideration, but anything we do take into consideration, it's just like good food and good water and enough rest. If we take consideration of that, it applies to us in a physical and non-physical form, to our well-being. And we've lost a lot of that knowledge, unfortunately, when we were pushed into a system of big and small. The masses are serving, the rest are dictating what's going to happen. The masses are more controllable if they're afraid, and if they're scared, and if they're taken out of their rhythms, and if they're taken out of all the natural rhythms they usually apply. If you disrupt people enough, you can control them better. And that was the whole theme, and it's still unfortunately a big of the theme until we put ourselves first. And that's the only way to stay healthy. And this is just a little part of how we can flow with the rhythms a little bit easier and apply them to ourselves, because these calendars do apply to our health. It's not just about gardening and when to do what. It really applies to our physical health. So anyway, so the bigger themes, and you might have seen this in the calendars, on the wall calendar, the legends are in the back. That explains the moon phases and explains all the little symbols that are in there. It explains the zodiac signs and explains a few other things that may be effective, and we'll talk about this too. So just in order to understand the basics, okay, this is a moon calendar, so it goes from new moon to new moon, the 28-day rhythm that the nature really flows with. And the basic rule is during the new moon is the phase towards the new moon, the waning moon, is the phase when we exert energy. when we're most active, we're most likely to do things, where we expel energy and give to Earth. And Earth is taking in that time. And in the other phase, from new moon to full moon, in the waxing moon phase, it's the other way around. Earth gives its energy and we're taking in. So that is a time when we are harboring in our body, when the nutrition goes in, but it's neutral. Also, everything that we put negative in our body is double negative. So we take in, we rest more, we accumulate more, we're more inclined to go to a spa than to go to the gym, these kind of things. So if somebody says, you know, I'm supposed to be doing A, B, C, D and clean up my garage, and it's 2 days before full moon, don't be surprised if you don't want to, because you're not in the phase of exerting yourself. And if you try that on a day like a new moon, or better yet, on a time during Mercury retrograde, you're far more energetic and far more inclined to do a good job with those things. So you can plan your activities a little bit accordingly. Same with travels. You don't want to travel towards full moon and on full moon, because that is the most volatile time in the month. This is when the energy flips from accumulating everything to spilling it back out, just like a river, just like a waterfall. So if somebody is really on the roll of negativity, that's when it's going to come out. That's why you have so many accidents on full moon. That's why the police is so active and the hospitals are active. It's also the day when we bleed out more. So any kind of real injury bleeds heavier. Now that has an advantage, not when you get injured, but when in the old days when they slaughtered the animals, they were slaughtering them on full moon because they would bleed out better and therefore the meat was better storageable. It had all its applications, everything. And now these days, you know, we go in the store and buy it, but it also, the application goes far deeper. It's about when we buy what, when we buy fresh stuff, when we buy meat. And then somebody says, okay, well, this stuff has been laying in the store for 3 days. What difference does it make when you pick it up? It does. Your energy, when you pick something up for yourself, has an impact on how it relates to your body. And we never have been taught that that is a relevant thing. And it is. We are creating the atmosphere around our body. So what we take in, how we take it in, with which attitude we're taking it in, when we're touching this stuff, has a direct impact on the quality, how it goes in. This is like anybody says, if you're in a negative mood, and really your stomach will respond, or your sinus will respond. I'm so stuffed. All those words that we have in associating with that are from the non-physical realm, not from the physical realm. You didn't eat anything that makes you sniffle, but you ate energy, emotions that make you sniffle.
Sure.
So, and the food responds to that too. You're really grumpy and angry and whatever, and you cut your meat. First of all, you're going to cut yourself, and then the meat takes on your negative energy. That's why meat is such a difficult subject right now. It's not just that we bombard those poor animals with hormones and with chemicals and with all sorts of toxins. We also put them through an extremely high testosterone, high energy, really difficult, stressful time in the killing process. And that is all stored in the meat, and that's what we eat.
Right.
So that is, and that's why it's not just some fancy thing to get your resources from someone that is caring and personal. That's how it was before, when you had your individual little farmers where you got your sources from. It does have a direct impact on the quality of what we eat and how we take care of ourselves, because we go to someone like this, they're a very different attitude than when we hurry up and run through the store, 5 minutes before we're dead tired and have to go home and do something else. That all has an impact on it, very much so. And this whole knowledge is based on the ancient understanding of what nature offers us and how we respond to it. So anyway, so those are the basic rules. So towards the full moon, we take in and Earth gives. That's when we harvest things. And during the waning moon, we exert ourselves and Earth takes in. This is when we apply resources to Earth, meaning that's when we fertilize, that's when we water the ground. This is when we kind of take the weeds out and things like that, because that's the time when this works better. And then, of course, the calendar is, according to Jana Paugner, you won't see anything like this unless it's upside down. I mean, because it's upside down. No, it's fine. No, it's okay. Okay. And that tradition has been passed down from generation to generation for thousands of years in the Alpine mountains, and it didn't get lost. It went underground. They didn't talk about it in public because they were on a direct route to Rome. Of course, they couldn't talk about it, but they kept it alive in those Alpine mountains or in mountain regions in general. Things like that get kept because their survival depends on it. Far more than in the lowlands where you have more access to food. If you're in the mountains and you run out of food, you can't go anywhere. Even in these days, the next store is maybe 5 miles away up and down the mountain and you can't go there. And then in the old days, they had whole families, 30, 40 people in their vicinity. They needed to know what they were doing with their garden, otherwise they'd starve. Mm-hmm. And so that knowledge kept very much alive and was expanded and then of course observed within the family. How does it apply? How does it apply to this kid or that kid? What does this kid tolerate for food and what does this kid tolerate? You know, and so for example, in the Alpine mountains, they didn't drink milk. They had cows and they had milk cows and they made butter from it and they made cream from it, but they didn't drink milk. Milk is acidic. And the acids, just like coffee, salt, and sugar in your body, get your body out of the alkaline state, out of the balanced state. So they didn't drink milk. Heidi is a myth. They ate cheese because it's fermented. They made yogurt. They made butter because that's just fat. And every so often they would use the cream for pies and cakes. But then, of course, that was reserved for holidays. It wasn't a daily occurrence. Okay, so milk is for baby cows. Period. It's not for humans. And what we get in the store is definitely for no one, especially not for humans, because it's just laced with the same hormones and chemicals, and it's denatured and whatnot, all treated and all these kind of things. In the same category goes microwave stuff. The microwaves are an unnatural wave that alter the chemistry of everything. What it is, it's just heated nothing. And you taste it. You drink regular good water and you put it in the microwave and then you tell me it doesn't taste different. Mm-hmm. Just try it out, just with regular water. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so the zodiac signs is actually the signs, the stars don't have an influence, not necessarily that direct. Of course, everything in the universe influences everything else. But what the observance was, this was the first natural calendar. Before people could read and write, they observed where the moon was standing in front of which star sign is the moon standing. Okay, so Aries means the moon is standing in front of Aries, a star sign Aries. And then over thousands of years, they observed the different day qualities and then started associating that, that's because the moon is in Aries. And that was how they kind of kept track of the natural rhythms. Mm-hmm. And it didn't necessarily, Aries didn't do anything. It was just kind of like recounting days in the month. Mm-hmm. They were looking to the stars and to associate where they are in the month, within the rhythm. Mm-hmm. Okay. But then those zodiac symbols do have characteristics that we can apply and that we can kind of go by. And they do associate also, and that was something that they observed, with our body parts. And then there's a general rule. When the moon governs a certain sign, like for Aries. Aries is the first sign. It governs the upper part of the head. Okay. So whatever you do positive on that day for your head or for the area of your head is double positive. Whatever you do negative is double negative. So if you're prone to headaches and migraines, you want to pay attention to Aries days and the days before, and you want to pay attention to what you eat physically and mentally and emotionally, and to avoid headaches on Aries. Okay. It also governs the eyes, so if somebody is very sensitive with their eyes, those are the days you probably need shades. And also on air days, Aries is a fire day, not necessarily air day. Air days are those yellow ones. This is when the light seems to be more intense than on other days. And so if we're having trouble with tearing eyes and we really can't afford to have that on that day because we have to drive a car, make sure you take your sunglasses along, stuff like that. So there is practical sides for the physical body, not just for gardening and for building a house and for all these kind of things. So these other little symbols just are stuff that I copied pretty much from the German calendar that she made, and there was a lot more in there, but I took out what kind of applied here to the area and what we could use here, and all I did in the calendar was just put the positive signs in, meaning the things that are positive and favored on that day is in there, not necessarily all the stuff that you probably shouldn't do on that day. The only thing that I'm always pointing out is that don't ever water your flowers on the flower day or any kind of plants. The plant symbols in front of those days talk about where the energy lies within the plant. So on a fruit day, the energy is in the fruit, the most energy. So those are the days when you harvest your plants, harvest your fruit from the plants. So if you have a leaf plant, you harvest them on a leaf day, because that's where the energy is. On a flower day, the energy is in the flower. So if you put water on the roots, your roots will gonna go foul and are more prone for disease. And if you put the water on a waning moon day, when the earth doesn't take in water on top of your roots, they even go worse, because then the water stands on top and really sours the soil. So that's a practical application, for example, like that. And ever since I've been starting to water my flowers on leaf days in the house and outside, I don't kill my flowers anymore. And that was one of the things. Anyways, so let's just go and pick a day. And since we're on Sunday the 5th, we'll just pick that day. And then we'll pick a couple other days to look at different scenarios, how to read this calendar. Okay, so today is Sunday the 5th, and it's a waxing moon, and we are about a week away, not quite a week away from full moon. So we're quite in the middle of that 2-week cycle. The day is governed by Taurus, meaning that the moon stands in front of the star sign Taurus, and Taurus is an earth sign, or considered an earth sign. Earth is earth signs. Let's see here, and that's in your things too. Nobody can remember all of that. So Taurus as an earth sign and is represented here with the color green. The blank parts are the roots, so it represents the roots. So it's a good day to eat root plants and root vegetables and things like that, because they're supported. The body parts that it associates with is the lower part of the head, from the nose, ears down to the larynx, which also covers your throat chakra, your truth center. Okay. So it influences the larynx and the speech. And the teeth, jaws, throat, tonsils, ears, and the blood circulation in particular in that area. So if somebody has trouble with his ears, notoriously, like Jack, for example, he's had ear infections as a kid, so he obviously always has to pay attention. Those are the days where he has to especially pay attention to his ears, so that he doesn't get exposed to cold wind and stuff like that. If somebody has a lot of teeth trouble, that's in between Aries and Taurus days, where you want to watch what you eat, how hot and cold liquids, and whatever else you take in. And if you drink a lot of coffee in those days, your teeth will flare. If you put a lot of sugar in your food, your teeth will complain, stuff like that. Because anything acidic will respond in that particular area. So teeth, throat, ears. Then the earth days are also considered salt days, meaning it's a cool day. Earth days are notoriously cool. What the temperature, the thermometer says, doesn't matter. It feels cooler than the same temperature on a fire day. And then our body says, okay, it's cool out there. You need some salt. That's the day to take salt, and that's where we're craving salt. So if somebody has heart troubles and they need to pay attention to salt, that's the day when you have to pay attention that you don't get too much. Of course, then if you have heart trouble, you want to really pay attention what kind of salt you eat, and that you eat a lot less than, and that you avoid foods that also already have salt in them, because it's never just pure salt. It's always laced with other chemicals that aren't healthy. So, somebody with heart trouble needs to stay away from anything boxes, period, and do themselves, and cook without salt, and salt accordingly, and pretty soon you'll find out that you need a lot less than you thought before. Salt is a taste enhancer, and if people are addicted to salt, first of all, they don't taste anything anymore, and they just crave salt because they're just so used to the taste of salt. But it's like any other addiction. It's like any other addiction. Salt and sugar are addictions. They're just not demonized as drugs and alcohol because they make good paying patients. Okay, makes money. So nobody's gonna tell you that. So on those Taurus days, we're more inclined to eat salty stuff. And if you watch yourself, if you write down for about a month or so what you actually eat which day, you can see it. You can see what you're craving and what you're looking for. Unless you're addicted to something, that screws everything up. Of course, because then you don't follow your body's rhythm. You don't listen to your body. You just listen to your cravings. So root vegetables. So the symbol next to here with the fruits in there, those they indicate that it's a good day if you need to go grocery shopping. That's a good day to buy fresh stuff because it lasts longer. It tastes nice. It lasts longer. The energy is in the things that you buy, more so in the root vegetables than in anything else. So if you need to go eat carrots for you, that's a good day to get those things and whatever. But you can get all sorts of, you don't get every day, get something different, But you pick the days that have the symbol in here if you want your fruits and vegetables to last longer. If you don't want to just throw them away after 2 days, you try to pay attention a little bit. Or if you don't have the time to pay attention, write it down and notice it. What it does to your lettuce. You bought it on Tuesday and it's wilted on Wednesday. You bought it on the right day and the next week it's still good. And it saves tremendous amounts of money. So this is a very sparse day because in the waxing moon there isn't much for activity levels because we're actually more resting than doing anything. So there isn't anything that's very favorable. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything, but it's not totally favorable to exert yourself and go for a marathon and whatnot all. So that would be all to be said for this day. There isn't anything special going on right now. We're not in Mercury retrograde. That is one of the few things that I talk about. I'm not very an astrologist, but Mercury retrograde has an impact on us. And it comes 4 times a year. It's when astrologically it says Mercury goes retrograde, that the impact is truly that. And everybody is afraid of that because things don't seem to work out. And it's not that they don't work out, but the energy favors finishing projects. Finishing cleaning your garage, finishing, whatever you've been putting aside for too long, finishing projects. And it does not favor starting new things. It doesn't favor closing your house contract or going on this one-in-a-lifetime trip that you've never allowed yourself go on and it's very strange and new. Going to the same neighbors over and over, that's okay. It's finishing something or anything finishing, cleaning up, closing off, doing what you've needed to be doing. That's very favored. So if you have a huge project, like kind of, getting rid of all the stuff in the garage, you'll pick your Mercury retrograde dates and you'll be 3 times as more successful as in any other time during the year.
And that's a period of time? It's not just a day.
No, those are periods. So we've got to have it from February 16th through March 9th. You can look this up. It's online. You can find Mercury retrograde date. Those things are all online on the net. Then June 17th through July 12th. And October 13th through November 3rd this year. and it varies every year a little bit.
Mhm.
The other thing that is of impact that I'm writing in here because is a Sirius rising and setting. The star, the morning star that you see in the sky just before the sun comes up.
Yeah.
Sirius has a tremendous impact on this earth because the beings living on earth were part of our foundational group that inspired the inhabitants of the human souls on this planet. They helped us evolve into the physical form that we are now, helped us evolve on a spiritual and a physical and non-physical way. And they having a communication, kind of like a broadband channel open during from July 23rd to September 23rd. It's always a time when that broadcasting from that planet or from that star system is the clearest, was over 90,000 years, always the clearest. The latest messages we received is that there's other channels open now from the Sirius star, because we're in Revelation, that are staying open year round. So we're getting a lot more of this information about how to move forward into a higher form of existence, into a less warlike form, going from the warlike energy, from the earthbound three-dimensional energy, to more of being a spiritual human rather than just a physical human. And what we're seeing on this planet right now are the outbursts of the last resistance, because nobody wants to change. Okay, change is dangerous, was always dangerous. If you left your cave, you could have been eaten by a bear. So our brain says change is dangerous, don't change. But this time of revelation is nothing but change. Change is the only thing that's consistent. And how we deal with it is what makes us comfortable or uncomfortable, healthy or unhealthy. The body isn't prone to disease unless we insist on it, use it as a tool. We use disease as a tool. We use aging as a tool. Our body isn't created to age. But, it gives us the excuse of, well, now the kids have to take over. Now I don't have to do so much. So if I have wrinkles in the mirror, then I can pass that on to somebody else. We're using excuses rather than living who we are. And it's a pattern that we've been doing from generation to generation. It's get passed down. It's almost ingrained into the DNA. We get taught as little children. It's subconsciously stuck there. And it's not something that we can willingly, with our brain, pull out. Because any change in us, any real change, has to be allowed. And allowing doesn't go through the brain. We can't. If we could will our life, we'd all be better, wouldn't it? We'd all have the BMW and go on. We'd all be totally different if we could will it, but we can't will it. We can only allow it, and allowing comes with surrender.
Right.
And not giving up, not getting sick, and not being in the hospital, just surrendering and having some faith.
Right.
That we're cared for, carried. That's the promise that we were given, that we're surrounded by caregivers and helpers. All the talk about and all the stories about angels and other beings that support us, they are by the millions there, ready to support us. If I knock on your door, will you open your door? But you have to open the door. And that's the thing. And they cannot override our free will. They cannot override our free will. So they cannot drag us to glory. Jesus didn't drag somebody by their hair. You need to get healed. Unless they were ready for it, there was nothing even he could do. And they were always masters on this planet and are consistently on this planet, whether we know it or not, that are here to support us in our growth process as we allow it.
So are we moving into the golden age?
We are in the process, this Aquarian age that started in the 40s, the transition from a Piscean age to an Aquarian age, the transition is almost done, and it had been decided at the beginning, about 90,000 years ago, when we were moving from a pure non-physical state of our soul into a physical state. We agreed to this process. Okay, we wanted to go through this process. It was also agreed upon that by this time there would be a time the constellations, the energy in the universe would be conducive to a evolutionary step up. There was others before, and everybody has a choice to go or not. That doesn't hinder. There's no time restriction. Just because you don't want to go doesn't mean you're failing or whatever. You're just not going anywhere. But this time is energetically conducive to really push this entire planet, including the people on it, forward. That's also why there's so many people on this planet right now. It's not because we were mass producing like rabbits. It's because everybody wants to be here in that process, kind of like the final exam. This is the time we want to take our body along. We're not leaving it behind anymore. Death is changing. Our DNA is changing. We know about 2 DNA strands. That's what we're taught in school. But we have 12. And they're waking up now. They're changing our whole structure. Do we realize it necessarily? In parts we do. In other parts we don't, because our brain doesn't understand it. And what we don't understand, we mystify. But they've been testing children in the 70s with 6 and 8 DNA strands, and it's been hush-hush. The science couldn't explain it, and so it didn't show up anyway. And there's a lot of things that we officially don't get told. Simple as that. That doesn't mean they don't exist.
Right. Yeah.
So the thing is that, and again, it's because I look in the mirror and says, okay, whoever said that we're not aging is lying. Okay, because the wrinkles are coming and and all that. But what it is our subconscious belief system. We believe it. We don't believe. We want to protect ourselves from pain and from disappointment. And so we'd rather believe in something because it's always been that way than having the faith that maybe it can change. Nobody explains to all the people going that disappear. Right? But there was this Bible story about 2 friends walking the street and one disappeared. It isn't some goofy story just from the Bible. It isn't. It was just not visible on that same level anymore. And there's a lot of people we don't see anymore. You don't see everybody you walk about in town. Do you remember any person you meet in town? You don't see each other anymore. You see certain people when you're on the same level. And if we're not, we don't see it. And so are the masters. The masters aren't invisible somewhere where we bump into them and oops, there's a ghost or something. We just aren't on their level quite yet where we naturally see them. And then there's all the stories about people recognizing afterwards that they met some angel, and at the time they didn't recognize it. Stuff like that. Those things are to be taken serious. They're not just some goofy woo-woo story. They are there. But we've been taught for thousands of years to take that magic is something negative. Oh, and that was bad and whatnot, all these kind of things, because it gave people power.
So we feel it.
And people with power were not submissive. They didn't make good slaves. And so we were notoriously taught over hundreds of years to fear that. And we were killed for it too. So we had every reason to fear it. So, but the wisdom didn't go under totally. It's been stored in little tiny pockets, and it's starting to come back. And people are starting to be interested now because they see the benefits. And the thing that we really have to consider is that, know thyself. The Temple of Delphi words. Know thyself is really more than just, I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. My job is what I am. We're not. You're not. That's not who you are. And knowing ourselves better makes us more peaceful. And it's not about changing the neighbor, because you can't change the neighbor. You can only set an example for yourself and be yourself, be your best possible self. And whoever sees that can take that on and help themselves. And that's all you can do. You can't drag your kids. You can't drag the neighbors. You can't change the politics. You can just set yourself an example and spread that energy out. And that's all we can do. And yes, and that's very frustrating at times. But whoever enters our personal realm is whoever we call. And if something really frustrates us, or if a person really frustrates us, It's because we still resonate with that resistance. And it's because we recognize it as something that we went through too in one of those lifetimes. Because in every lifetime we experience all there is. So we were good and bad, and we were nasty and not, and we did all of those things. And if it really still challenges our emotions, it's something that we still have a knot in us, where we haven't forgiven, where we haven't let go, where we're still holding a grudge, where we still feel incapable of changing something or doing something about. And these kind of things, when we're frustrated because we can't keep the neighbor out of our yard, or the next door dog, or whatever, it's because we still have an issue with something. That's why they are. Once we've forgiven that thing, those people move out of our personal realm. Our personal realm is a space that we create. Everybody has their own personal realm and own personal world. And some people share a little bit, but never everything. What you do all day is different from what you do all day. It's all personal. And how we feel about it is up to us. And how we create that. And if we make it Saint Germain had this really nice thing about boring. He said, being bored is when you know what you had planned to do, but you don't really want to do it, and you still don't give yourself permission to do something else. That's when you get bored. And I thought it was spot on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you guys pick a day. Let's get back to the calendar so that I can teach you a little bit more about what's in there. Any day in the calendar.
February
Just pick
18th.
something. February 18th. Why that one?
It's your birthday.
Ah, that's what I figured. Someone's birthday. Okay, February 18th. So now that is a waning moon phase day. In the middle again. So that's a very active day.
Okay.
And you can see it on all the symbols that you can do a lot of things. Of course, it's your birthday. All you want to do is to celebrate. But you
He's
could
going to send me out to chop wood.
you could theoretically, that's the day when you water your flowers in the house. Okay, so that's the watering can there. But it's also a day when you can fertilize your vegetables or fertilize your flowers inside and out. And this is a good day, if it's not freezing, of course, where you can wash your windows and they actually get clean, and not so that you have to hide them afterwards. And this is a perfect day to wash your laundry, because on those days you don't need any soap. You get everything clean. You use the same thing, the same load before a full moon, and you can put a boatload of soap in it and won't get clean. So in the waning moon, if we could plan it that way, this is when your stuff gets clean. So if you have something that really needs to get clean, put it into that load. Don't frustrate yourself on another day, because it just won't get clean. The chopping wood is for the 3 months, January, February, March, in the waning moon phase. In the old days, that's when the people went out to chop the wood for firewood, for the next year's firewood. So they'd bring it down. The sap was in the root, and this was the days when you were chopping live trees that would burn the next year, the next winter, preferably. And everybody that ever had a wood stove knows that you get a batch of wood that burns and another batch that doesn't burn. And it depends on when it was cut. So, and Jack makes firewood out of dead trees, which when he doesn't know when they were dying. And he would do well on chopping that wood on days that are preferable for firewood, which of course he doesn't, because he doesn't want to believe it, and so then he gets grumpy when the wood doesn't burn. And I give up. So anyways, because you're not always having the time. He has to feel good about certain things, and some days feel better than others, and so it just doesn't fit into his schedule.
Right.
Okay.
So even down trees that have already died, because that's what we would typically do too.
Yes, you
are
go
better
out on a
cut
day
up.
when it's when it's favorable because the moment of touch is what changes the energy.
Okay.
So Scorpio is by nature a water sign, and governs our power organs. The sexual organs belong to our power center, to our solar plexus, including the heart. This is the true power center, female and male power center. But Scorpio as a water sign also governs the heated liquids on this planet, like magma. So it's truly it connects with the center, the power center of this planet, the liquid power center of this planet. So those are days when usually when we're just about to erupt into a personal disagreement over some power struggle, you want to stay away from that day, because that's when emotions really heat up.
On the 18th, it says Sagittarius.
She's
February?
on January.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
in January.
back in
I'm sorry.
January.
It's February.
I'm sorry. Okay,
We're doing.
so that was
February.
January.
She's
Well, I
been
was doing
talking about January.
January. Sorry about that.
Oh,
I went to
okay.
the wrong day.
Okay.
You didn't disagree with me. You should have.
Well, some of it was
February
Some of it's
18th.
Some of it's-
Some of it's the same
Anyway,
day.
It's just that.
Okay, we'll just go through this quick and then we go to
Okay.
February.
Okay.
Okay, so Scorpio as a water day, usually water days are damp and you can feel it outside, whether it rains or snows or not, doesn't make any difference. They're damp days, and that's when our body says, I need carbohydrates to counter the loss of heat in the body. And because when your skin is wet, you're losing more heat than when your skin is dry.
Right.
That's why people get freeze easier when they have wet clothes on, or when they fell in the river, or their head is wet and whatever. They're far more in danger than if they were dry at the same cold.
Well,
So
it's
that's
very
why we crave carbohydrates on those days. Okay, let's go to February. Jeez,
February 18th. Yeah.
let's see, February 18th. Okay, February 18th, same moon phase, so waning moon phase, so part of it agrees. But Sagittarius, of course, is a fire sign, so it's a warmer feeling day, and on warmer feeling days, our body craves protein. That's when we digest protein the best, depending on the protein, of course. That doesn't have anything to do with it, whatever agrees with your body. And Sagittarius governs the lower part, the thighs, the upper part of the legs. Here's another, this ascending and descending moon symbol, how that's associated with 6 signs are ascending and 6 signs are descending. That has to do, those are alternative days for planting. So in ascending moon signs, the energy comes out of the earth. This is when you want to harvest. If you can't harvest on the appropriate moon day, an ascending moon sign is also an alternative day. There's always alternative days. In a descending moon sign, the energy goes into the earth. This is when you want to plant. This is when I want to add stuff to the earth. So concerning with the body, the ascending moon signs govern the outer limbs of the body, arms and legs, feet and stuff, and the descending moon signs govern the internal organs. So that's how we can distinguish that. So Sagittarius is an external sign, so it governs the thighs and the veins. So if you have trouble from the hips down, that may be not the right day for a marathon.
Sure.
But it would be the right day for a massage.
There you go.
It's always the right day for something.
Yeah.
So it's always.
So your birthday is a good day for a massage.
It's always so Sagittarius. So the fire days govern the fruit. So that's a fruit day. In February, of course, there's nothing but planting and stuff like that. But it's considered a fruit day. They are very good days for canning. That's a good day for canning. It's a good day for grocery shopping, anything to do with fruit, because the flavors the canning days are really good because then it doesn't get moldy. And everyone that's ever done canning knows, you do a batch of something on one day and 2 days later you do the same batch again and one molds and the other one doesn't. It's because of the days that were picked. Not necessarily because you were sloppy on one day and not on the other. Usually on those days for canning, you also need less sugar. So you can. The green fork symbol is fertilizing flowers. The white fork symbol was fertilizing veggies. But so if you have plants in the house, that's a good day for giving them a little bit of fertilizer. Never more than once a month, other than you kind of, because we tend to overwater them anyways, and then it's just too much of a good thing. But that would be a day where you can add something. If some plants look kind of droopy and need a little bit of extra, that's a good day for that. And again, January, February, March, the waning moon phase are the days when it's appropriate to go firewood hunting.
Okay.
Best for firewood hunting. Then there's one more week in October that is good. If somebody didn't have time, whatever, needs to cut firewood and still needs to have a little bit of time to dry it, there's 1 week in October where that's good too. And so that is February, that day. Pick another day, or pick something from the bottom of your explanations if you want to know something. Let's see, what do we have here? See, that was February 16th, we're starting the Mercury retrograde phase. And the Mercury retrograde phase goes till March 9th. So your birthday is in the retrograde phase. So do not get all excited about starting a new project or buying a house on whatever something. You can look at it, but it won't close. And every realtor, if they would keep track of that, can tell you that there are certain times when things just don't move forward, don't close, don't happen, things get postponed, dates get kind of, people don't show up and whatnot all. And the same goes for other things, for example, for dentists and for hairdressers. And where I grew up, on certain days the hairdressers were closed. It seemed randomly, but they went by the old calendars because the people still knew that if they go on a certain day to the hairdresser, the hair wouldn't turn out properly, and so the hairdresser didn't even open up because nobody would show up anyways. Same with dentists. Now every dentist will tell you, well, I can't do this, I have to earn money. Well, but if they have a complicated customer, for example, that tends to bleed or have more pain or need more has heart problems of stuff, if they would go by the calendar and not do a surgery or a procedure on a critical day like a heart day, they would have more success rates. And actually in Germany, the tendency, this knowledge has been around for so long, the tendency these days is that the big clinics schedule their surgeries, if they can schedule, if it's not an emergency, according to the calendars. So they don't do heart surgeries anymore on heart days. Because it's not because they believe in it, because it saves them insurance money. They don't get lawsuits anymore, that they don't. If it works for them financially, that's what they go by. Whether they believe it or not, it's all woo-woo stuff, but if it works, so be it. And it doesn't work.
How that research is starting to catch up with.
So then when people ask me, it says, I got this knee surgery in front of me and the doctor picked that's a day. That's when I look at the calendar, okay? And if it governs anywhere in the region of the knees, it says postpone it. Well, I can't. I says, yes, you can. Yes, you can tell your doctor to postpone it.
Yeah,
He's supposed to, you don't have to explain it, just postpone it. It's a long day. And my mother was a really good example for that, because she doesn't believe any of this, of course. And she's 90 years old, or going to be, and she's been smoking all her life, which even I didn't even know. But anyway, she has a lot of trouble with her. Just like they put in the heart, they put stents in to open up those veins. And so she had the first surgery scheduled on a day that governed exactly that region, the hips and the upper leg. And I said, Mom, postpone that date. This is not going to go well. It's not going to heal very well. You're going to have trouble afterwards. Postpone it. Well, of course she did, because she couldn't tell the doctor to postpone something. And then I asked her, she lives in Germany, so I asked her afterwards, how was your surgery? Oh, it was horrible. It was just horrible. It took me forever, and it just was so painful, and they had to put me under so many times, and they couldn't get this needle in, and they couldn't this and that, and I said, okay. So, but they did only half. So she scheduled the other half a few weeks later, and she scheduled it on a heart day. Now she's been a heart patient for 40 years. Okay, heart and kidney. I says, Mom, this is going to be a very difficult day for you because of your heart problems. Well. So again, so she went through the procedure, or I thought she was, and I called her afterwards a week later. I said, how was your doctor appointment? Well, they couldn't even do it. I collapsed on them before they even started. You know, they had her wait from
There was
morning
another
till
intervention.
afternoon. She didn't drink, she didn't eat. She was 90 years old. She collapsed on them, so they couldn't even get started. You know.
So with
But-
those things, like on the symbols on the left over here, those are things that are positive. That
Positive.
You want to
Those are
do.
favorable on
The
that day.
things on the right are things that you actually, like the teeth, throat, ears on February or January 5th, like today, you wouldn't want to do dentist work.
There is
You
this
would
one
avoid-
rule: you don't want to cut into the body on a day that's governed by the sign that governs that body part.
Okay.
Okay, that's the only rule. You don't
Okay.
want to cut into the body on that day. So you don't want
Yeah.
to cut into your thighs on a thigh day. You don't want to cut into your heart on a heart day.
Yeah.
And if, like with my mother, if she has heart trouble, choosing a day that's governed by the heart isn't doing your heart a
Right.
favor.
Right.
Okay, so that
Right.
extends that a little bit. But anything you do on that day that is favorable, like listening to music that soothes your heart,
Mhm.
or hugging a person, then you would actually, that's enhanced positive for
Okay.
your heart or for your thighs or whatever.
So if you were to go to the dentist for preventative care on like Monday the 6th,
What, January, February
Yeah.
the 6th?
January, like where it says it's teeth, throat, ears, that would, I mean, you're doing a positive thing for your tooth. For your
Depends.
teeth.
If you need to have dental work done, it's invasive.
But if it's
But
just
if
like
it's
a
If you
cleaning,
just for cleaning and
Right.
stuff, then that's a positive thing.
Right.
Now-
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand.
The cleaning part, and I'm sorry to say that is a development in the last 30 years, I would say. It's a pure moneymaker. If you clean your teeth properly every day, and the cheapest and best way to do that is, instead of toothpaste, which has chemicals in, using organic baking soda. Okay? And in the mouth water, the most ideal thing to actually clean your mouth out would be 3% hydrogen peroxide. And all you need is a tablespoon or a teaspoon in your water. And if you want something that tastes good, you put a couple of drops of tea tree oil in it. I've been doing this for 10 years. I haven't had to go to the dentist yet in those 10 years. Okay. While I had teeth, accordingly to my mother and dentist at the time, that were really soft and really bad and needed something all the time, the dentist must have loved me, whatever. Anyways, there was something all the time. So if somebody has trouble mechanically, and people sometimes let's see. So here in January the 10th, we're going to have a lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a day where we want to kind of lay low a little bit in that time. So that's why I put the times in when the eclipse is really happening, and the eclipse is always just a few minutes. Really, the real eclipse. So right at noontime is when your eclipse happens. So don't get in a pickle in a hurry and do all sorts of things for planning for noon on that day. And it's really not that difficult, but to know that our body is rebooting and the energy isn't really favorable for paying attention on the road and stuff like that, especially, well, full moon is never favorable for any of that stuff anyways, but especially on the eclipse days, you just want to, if you don't have to plan a trip, don't plan it on full moon or the day before.
And is that for any eclipse?
Yes.
You want to just lay low and...
Yes,
Yep.
any eclipse is a so-called computer reboot.
Yep.
And any full moon is definitely a day where you want to stay low. And in the time when we talked about Sirius rising and setting, in that time the emotions flare. Really, that's the time when people are more emotional than any other time. It's the time of the dog days. The heat is rising, and it's not just physical heat. It's emotional and mental and energetic, spiritual heat is rising. It's moving. It's the influx from that planet that where we get a little bit nudged to move ourselves into the right direction. And a lot of people respond aggressive to that because they don't want to change. So that's when you get on the road, and that's when everybody goes on vacation, and that's when you get all those, people yelling at each other from the car and whatnot. It's because they are not aware of how to take care of them. Now, our emotions are also very much influenced by the food we eat. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's emotions. The emotional body is very close to our physical body, so it really influences each other. Our feelings are a little bit out there. That's where flower essences come in. They are on a different level. They bring clarity. They're not influenced so much by our physical body or emotional body. That's why you have different healing methods. You treat the physical body with physical medication. You treat the emotional body with essential oils because they touch that. You bring more clarity into your whole system. You cleanse out and clear out your chakras and your energy flow with flower essences and homeopathics. You go into the higher realms of medicine. And so you have different approaches. There's not one better than another. They're just different approaches. Just like you don't take the same tea for every ailment. Other things that I can explain. Look for something that you want to know. What time is it?
3:08.
Gee, real fast.
Covered it all.
Not quite. There's always other questions that come up once you start working with it. So what I noticed here in the years before is that here in the Black Hills, it tends to rain, not on water days, they're damp, but it tends to actually have rain and snow on earth days. And except for last summer where we had rain on water and earth days. Now you have to take, the calendar isn't exact, okay? Not so exact. You have to have a 12-hour overlap. So if it starts on a few hours before it turns into an earth day, don't come to me and complain about the calendar. It's the earth. We created the calendar in association with earth rhythms, but kind of like as much as we can, but it seemed to, in those years before, it really seemed to work. We all have an innate sense of those things. Jack, for example, gets all antsy in spring when the winter is dry like now. By February he can barely contain himself because he thinks he needs to water the trees, and that's exactly when the trees actually need water. This is when you lose your trees in spring because they didn't get enough water. And then you use a water day to water the trees so you don't kill your trees in the middle of the winter. The same goes for pruning. There was a hailstorm in Munich at one time that took out all the forests around the town. All the forest, the evergreen forest died within a year from that hailstorm. What happened is the hailstorm happened on a full moon, and the energy was in the tips of the trees, and it sheared the tips of the trees off, so the trees all died from the top down. And then they have a nice word for it. Of course, nobody could explain why it was, but things like that. Nature has its way of regulating itself. You know, we humans step in too fast. So, for example, we had a long period of drought here in the Black Hills, and then we got the bark beetle, which is nature's answer to having too many trees, not enough water for everybody. Everybody is weak. Okay, to take the weakness out, you reduce the amount of trees that need water. And the people come, well, that doesn't really work for tourism, and then we have to do something about it. Did it help? No, trees still die. So it just costs a lot of money. And it gets everybody rattled. And the rattling part and the doing part and the fighting things is war. And war creates war. And the first place it creates war is in you, in your body. Any cause, no matter how good it sounds, if it has a warlike energy, it'll create war in you and therefore acidity. So the acidity in our body does come to 30% from the food and to 70% through our brain. And that's, so we can balance our body, but if we don't balance our tempers and our associations with negative stuff, and that's why I don't have any TV, because there's nothing positive on this darn TV anymore. And yes, it's in the box, and your brain is a caveman. It doesn't understand the difference between TV and reality. So you watch some warlike movie, your body gets an adrenaline shock like it would be in the middle of a war scene. And your body goes downhill. And then we stuff ourselves with addictive stuff like food and sugar and salt at the same time, and then we add to the process. And then people are surprised that they're sick. And anything can heal. Our body is self-healing. Completely and utterly self-healing. There isn't anything that our body cannot heal.
So Mary asked earlier, you were going to talk at some point about like the global warming and climate change and how is our interference, how we're messing.
Well, we got between 9 and 11 billion people on this planet. Of course, the climate is a little different than when we were 2 billion. Okay, which were just a short time ago. We are influencing the climate, but also since the whole planet is in this evolutionary process to go to a more peaceful level, what we experience is our personal energetic influence on the elements. So we're 90% water. Water carries our emotions, okay, in and out the body, in and out the planet. So all the storms and all the water things that happen are the result of the emotional upheaval of the people on this planet. And it's not something that you can willfully cut down. And it isn't anything about doing anything about it. The planet is going to survive. It changes. If you dig a hole in one end of the earth, you'll have a mountain on the other. You turn a desert into an oasis on one side, Earth will create a desert on some other spot where there was an oasis before. It'll always balance itself. That we don't know that somebody built an oasis in Africa and we all of a sudden get a desert. Well, that's just our ignorance. Poking into the earth is kind of like poking a pie, It's hot underneath there. If you poke an apple pie, the apples come out. Okay, of course we get earthquakes, of course we get spillouts, of course we get damage if we damage the crust, the thin crust on our planet. It can't be any different. Climate change is being hyped up. It's a big money maker. The climate changed, but the climate always changed. The climate always changed. Any scientist can tell you that Earth went through all sorts of rhythms. It's not about that. And if we do understand that animals have spirits and souls just like people or similar to people, even if a species goes extinct, the souls will incarnate in another species. will come back. And if we have less animals and less living beings on this planet at this time than we ever had before, it's because we have 11 more billion people on this planet. That doesn't mean the souls of the animals vanish. They're just not incarnated at this time in here. But we do need this planet in balance for our own being, because we are part of this planet. So we need the plants for nourishment, for healing. We need the animals for nourishment, for healing, for the balance in us. That's the critical part. Not how much and how many and whatnot all. We need the water. And right now, the tendency is to control everything. It's the same control as before, controlling the people, controlling the amount of people, being in control. And the only thing we never are is in control. Change is inevitable. We're never in control. Control is a war game.
Does the burning of hydrocarbons and all of that
It reduces
matter
the
then?
oxygen on our planet, yes.
But
And
so-
our body will adjust to less oxygen.
But the trees aren't, because they're dying.
Yes, and that's why we'd have less oxygen on our planet for a while.
Yeah.
And it'll reduce our oxygen intake. We will mutate to being able to deal with less oxygen over time. And over time, the increase in our population will fluctuate too. And as we go down, the trees can come back up. It's a rhythm too. Yes, we know we have less oxygen in our atmosphere, and yes, our body will gradually adjust to that.
So the overconsumption or those things don't concern you really in this space, that it'll all balance.
It'll balance out. It'll balance. We are in a major transitional time, and what we're seeing is it's not all positive, of course not. It's horrendous what's happening, okay? But it needs to be. We need to be able to notice it in order to be feeling responsible for anything. If we're unaware of it, we can't respond to it. But the response comes on an individual, personal level, and you see it everywhere. It's just not in the news. The positive things that are happening on this planet are way more in the majority than all the negative stuff. It's just not on the news because it doesn't create fearful people, and only fearful people make good slaves.
Sure.
It's just the system hasn't caught up to it yet.
Sure.
We don't, on a governmental level, don't have the faith yet that it's okay for people to think.
Right. Yeah. No.
You
The
know,
government does not.
It's
want us
not.
thinking.
They're not there yet.
Right.
They're not there.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it needs this awakening of drastic things happening before the sleepiest person actually says, well, maybe there's really something that's not okay.
Yeah.
We still got plenty of sleeping people out here, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's easier to stick the head in the sand.
Yeah.
But it's not about going out and doing something warlike.
No, right.
It's about
Right.
changing your
No,
personal
that
life.
makes it worse.
And
Right.
that makes the impact, that sets the example for others.
Right.
As you can.
Right.
You can't eat totally organic when there is no way to get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is no way to avoid plastic when there is nothing else there. I mean, there is people that go really extreme and try, and then it makes life difficult. And when you make life difficult for you, you put yourself under stress, then you have an impact again on your body. So it's all in balance, and all in balance, as much as we can.
Sure.
If it feels good to you, if it feels in harmony for you, you're in harmony.
Yeah.
If it puts stress on you, no matter which direction, it's stressful.
Yeah.
That's the role. That's the role. And be honest with yourself. Trust your gut. Even if the neighbor says that's not the way it is, and if society says that's not how you should do it, if it feels really good in you, it's your path. And that takes guts.
Yeah.
And that's why the first DNA strand after the first two, which was truth and love, that came awake, was courage. Because it takes courage to go through this time. Not that we can't, because we signed up for it, okay? We agreed to that thing. No backing out now, just because we don't remember.
That's cute.
Anyway, so those quarter days, and the holidays that I put in there are just for the fun part. Of course, the holidays in the Celtic world were according to to winter and summer and spring and harvest and all these kind of things. So they had their days. The one day that actually reaches into the different realms a little bit is November 1st, what we call Halloween, All Hallows Day. That is truly, it's not exactly on the 1st of November. It has an astrological date too, and you can find this on the internet. When the veils between the different realms are actually really thin. And the old timers knew that. That's the day, that's when they addressed the spirits, their loved ones that have passed. That was the day of mourning, not so much because they mourned on that day, because they were more afraid of them showing up. Okay, and us being able to see him. But the veils are thinning so much now, we can see him anytime. And we do see him anytime. And they're not there to haunt us. They're not different from us. They're just not physical at that moment. They got a better overview than we do. But the only place to do an evolutionary process, and that was one of my questions at one time, is why on earth would I come back here to endure this over and over, to go through that and forget it about it, go through all that crap one more time? He said, because you agreed to evolve from a pure physical form into a spiritual human being with your body. You agreed that. And the only place to do that is for you in your agreement right here on this planet. When you're in non-physical form, you break time in between, you see clear, you make new plans, you talk to everybody, you talk to the masters what you want to learn next or where you want to go next, but you do not evolve as fast as you do here, because that is your assignment. It's kind of like you're going to university. You can go there and look from it from the outside, but you don't learn anything. So you have to go in order to learn something, and that's why we're here. So no excuses for being, just one thing after another. Just got to do it.
Yeah.
So the other things in this little calendar are, so there's a bread symbol in there. There's days when the yeast dough goes better than on others, and there's days when it's better suited for doing something for our skin that's more favorable. I put things in. There's days in there for the hairdresser and stuff like that. I put in the front or in the back of the calendar the days when it's suitable to go to a dentist, because they're not on that regular base. They're so I put some of the stuff that weren't so suitable for everyday pages. I put that in the explanations in front. There's favorable days to put your lawn down, to sow your seeds out, and then so that days to prune your trees. If you prune them on a full moon, you will definitely kill your tree. You might as well dig them just out. If you prune your trees on a new moon, you encourage growth and health. If you have a sickly tree, that's when you want to prune them so they come back and stuff like that. So there's a few helpful things in there for doing stuff. Out here in the countryside, in the old days, the farmers hatched their chickens on full moon because they would have a full clutch and a healthy clutch. And since there's always the same amount of days, it doesn't vary, you can actually time that when you leave the eggs with the chicken in order to hatch them on full moon. And things like that, because time was of the essence. Your work labor was of the essence. You didn't have a grocery store to go to when you messed up. It had to be, the timing was helpful because it was labor intensive. Everything was labor intensive. When the farmers drove their cows up the mountains in summer to get them on the summer pasture, and they had to wean last year's calves, they needed to ride day, otherwise the cows would turn around and run home. There wasn't any fences, there wasn't any trailers, they had to go along. So you picked the days before full moon, when it was easier for the calves to let go, last year's calves to let go, and for the cows to separate. Things like that, and that would be suitable nowadays too for calving and weaning, and it would be less stressful on everyone.
Because again, it's a time of transition.
It's a time of transition, and there's times to make it easier and times to make it not so easy. If you want to let your kids go to college, if you can, time it on a full moon. You'll have you sleep easier that night, okay? And the kid travels easier. stuff like that. It applies for everything and everyone.
But then that's in contrast to normally you don't want to travel on a full moon.
Yeah, well,
So it's
2
a
3 days before full moon.
yeah, it's the
The-
tension between
Well,
the two.
or pack the suitcases on that day and travel the next day or something like that. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Because it's
Make
the
the
emotional.
decision.
It's the emotional
Yeah.
transition.
Make the
Versus
decision
the
on those
turmoil of
days.
traveling.
Yeah, the traveling is not so is
Mhm.
not so favored because you have all sorts of people on the road that didn't pay attention and just kind of exude all the things that they accumulated for 2 weeks.
Right.
That's why I personally wouldn't go to a holistic fair on a full moon. Well, you might make a good money though, because everybody comes there with all their troubles. But then you feel that aggression too, and you feel that energy there. You might just have to have a really thick hide in order to endure that.
So where can they order, and how much do you charge for your calendars?
If people pick them up here, I charge $21. If I have to ship them, I charge $26.95.
For the small one or the
For
big
both,
one?
for either one, for either one of them. They're available on Etsy, they're available on Amazon, and they're available through me.
And what's it called?
It's the Celtic Moon Calendar.
By Isa Kirk. And that's the handheld one, the small one.
The small one for the pocket. It's got 120 pages. It has a non-destructible front page because I usually tear my stuff up. And it has enough room for notes and everything. The wall calendar is made so that if you hang it up, you can always flip it up to read up on your chart. Let's see. I got a couple usually down at the Chautauqua Artist Market in Hot Springs.
Hot Springs, South Dakota.
February. In South Dakota, yes. And other than that, just contact me direct over Facebook or email or whatever, and I'll ship them out.
Okay.
Thanks for asking that.
Mm-hmm. That's important. People want to get them. Say goodbye now.
Goodbye. I think we're done for today.
Bye.
There you go.